Major difference between people in Bangalore and people in the Delhi is Delhi people actually more risk takers than Bangalore people.
One thing I do really well in life is चप्पल घिसना. So I was like चप्पल घिसते हैं और 10 घरों से 5 करोड़ लेने की जगह 50 लोगों से 1 करोड़ रुपया लेके आते. I say when I'm an operator, I'm more banya than anything else. And I think one of the beautiful concepts, in Sikhi is Rab Rakha. Like do your best and leave the rest to God, right? I'm not great at 0 to 1. जब वो 1 हो जाता है, I can take 1 to 100 and I'm very good at it. This is something famous my dad says. He says, Dhruv, bodily harm can be recouped. You lose an arm, you can wear like prosthetics. Mental harm can be made do, but reputational harm can never be undone. Coming back to the question on running a fund, ask yourself 3 questions. If you're fundraising, you suffer with it, right?
I feel the same. What I struggle with a lot is always being on. This was night time and we were getting drinks and this other friend was sitting in Dubai and we were exchanging messages on WhatsApp and we were talking about the fund. And I told him I'm at this friend's wedding and he's like, dude, it's 12 o'clock at night. You're at a friend's wedding. You should be drinking and chilling. Why are we talking?
You also hit upon very important topic. Should I run a fund or I'm more fitted to build something?
I think when we speak to founders in our pipeline, we tell them don't talk to us as if you're talking to an investor or a VC. We are not that.
So in your pitch, do you say that you are a micro VC or not?
What you really see is a bunch of kids messaging me, I really think I can add to the VC world. Boss, the best thing you can do right out of college is...
Firstly, just want to give, a thank you note to all the audience that has seen the first season, Karnama season, which had 12 episodes. And, of course, we had a lot of fun. But, every episode also, captured one theme. And because you all liked it and, we wanted to keep doing it. And this season, what we are trying to do is focus more on the VCs and LPs, like we did with previous season, how founders can build in different domains. Now we want to focus how anybody wants to start a fund, can learn, across the episode, various aspects. With that said, the 2 guests I have, gentlemen here, they're already building, something amazing. And, of course, the fund they are building right now can be called a micro fund. But the point is not just that. It's like how the journey started, how they made up their mind, and what all obstacles they faced to get to where they are, or maybe even getting ahead. What are the obstacles they see? That's the idea, and that's why we're doing this episode. So thanks a lot, Pranav, Dhruv, both of you for coming in, joining. I'll let you only introduce quickly, and then maybe talk a little bit about the whole theme as such.
Thank you for having us. Pranav, pehle aap.
No. I think
Pranav, एक chance मिलेगा.
I'll let you go first.
Pranav, you getting a chance. No. Please take it.
I'll let you go first. I think. Dhruv, go for it.
So thanks for having me, and for such august company as Pranav. I must acknowledge before I even start that when I started thinking about being a VC, one of the people who most warmly told me, "Yaar, aap to definitely kar loge," is actually Pranav. We had a very dear conversation when I started thinking about the fund. We were introduced by a common friend, Suraj. You'll hear his name a couple of times because he's the guy who helped me set up the fund. And he introduced me to Pranav, and Pranav and I started chatting, and then we realized we have so many common connections. And then a few minutes later, he said, I think aap to macha doge, to aap karo, aap definitely karo. And I went back and told my wife that. I said, of the couple of people I remember off the top of my head who actually said I'd be good at this, Pranav was one of them. So I'm very happy that we're doing this together, and it's great that we're doing something before Pranav gets married, so that at least he gets his talk time out.
It's all about
So I'm, I've been an operator for the last 18 years of my life. 15 of them धंधा कर रहा था, 3 साल consulting करी बीच में, और realize करा कि the operator itch is very strong. So started my career in healthcare, moved to consulting after my MBA at NCAD. Then after 3 years doing a lot of strat consulting and private equity DD work, realized the operator itch is very strong. Came back, spent 2 years at Paytm. Then I helped build an early stage insurtech, which subsequently listed 2.5 years, built it into a very strong revenue generating profitable company. This is before AI and ML was a thing. We were in the AI ML journey. and somewhere along the lines became like, couple of the investors and people in the VC ecosystem saw me and said, look, we like how you think, how you behave, how you build value. So थोड़ा beauty parade हुआ, 4-5 लोगों से मिलाया, and then
Hmm.
finally I landed up joining Bharat Pay. Spent about 4 years there.
Okay.
Evenly split pre and post are sort of iconic, some of the iconic events that happened at Bharat Pay.
Yeah.
And so I've seen both the great story, but I've also seen what it takes to actually build a very, very compliant, very, very regulated organization. And then last year at some point, that operator life collided with my angel investing, early stage investing life, where incidentally I actually never did a pre-seed. I maybe I've done, out of the 56 companies I've invested in, I did maybe 5 pre-seed companies. 51 of them were all like post-revenue. I was taking bets with a certain style and conviction, and you and I discussed it yesterday, right?
Hmm.
We'll talk more about it later, but like the idea was that collided and said, look, I think what I'm doing is great, and lately I've just been building SPV after SPV because people keep saying हमारा भी पैसा ले लो, हमारा भी invest कर दो. So I said, why don't I do it more structurally? And then I went around talking to a lot of people. I have a habit of just like, going to my mentors, my friends, and as I said, like Pranav and a few others,
Hmm.
right? Rohan
Hmm.
and Arjun at Malhotra at Good Capital, Sohail
Yeah.
Sameer. A lot of these guys, they just pushed me in the right direction. They gave me the little nudges and said, "हाँ तू कर सकता है. Why don't you think about it?"
Uh-huh.
And then I started thinking, and then when I felt that we had arrived on something very, very different, very, very slightly more evolved than what the current VC model
Hmm.
is when I said, okay, now because this is different, because this is not just a Me Too approach to
Yeah.
deploying capital, I want to do things this way. And I kept saying, अगर 50 crore नहीं रेज होंगे मैं नहीं चालू करूंगा, अगर 100 crore नहीं होंगे मैं नहीं करूंगा, अगर 150 नहीं होंगे मैं नहीं करूंगा, and somehow each benchmark kept hitting. So that's what we've done now. We're a 120 crore fund with a 120 crore green shoe option. We've deployed close to about 20 odd crores from the fund
Hmm.
across about 10 companies. We are a by operator for operators fund only, so it's run by operators. So we're more of an operator VC fund,
Yeah.
or like we like to call it, we are a bunch of operators who are also wealth managers. We manage people's money, put it in the right places, and then grow the alpha
Yeah.
by bringing sort of our experience to bear. We have about 120 of the top consultants, lawyers, founders, CXOs in the
Hmm.
country as LPs. So our fundamental belief of bringing color of money in the form of social and intellectual capital along with the financial capital is how we've built Eternal, which is the fund that I run today.
Amazing. Malab, you also hit upon very important topic. And Pranav, after you introduce, I would like to maybe take your thoughts on that and come back to Dhruv. Is, how to even get started, how to even know that running a fund will be something for you, right? I think that's the first step before even getting to anything else, right? That is it even the right fit for me, right? Like, should I run a fund, or I'm more fitted to build something, or maybe just keep doing the consulting business? So, Pranav, once you introduce
Sure.
yourself, please, talk about that aspect as well. And I would definitely want to say and echo what he just mentioned, right? Pranav is hands down the most kindest person in the ecosystem.
I
So,
agree.
the reason we're doing this also is because of Pranav, right? He pushed me to also
Yes.
do a series more focused on this. He was the first person I brainstormed with, and one time I brainstormed, he gave me like 6 names. I'm like, okay, hold on, let me do one by one. So, Pranav, I also wanted to mention that, but yes, please introduce, what you're doing, why you building, and who pushed you.
Thank you for putting me on the spot. And I think I have learned from both of you. So I will return the compliment that way as well, so that the pressure is not just on me. But great to be here. Thanks for having me here. I think it'll be hard to go after Dhruv's introduction, but I will not try and match it also. I will just keep mine short and crisp. I think relate to him funnily on multiple aspects, right? I think Delhi Punjabi, been an operator, worked in startups, early stage, growth stage, mix of it over a period of time. We both done, I think, almost 1 year MBAs. So that is another similarity. And even for me, I think for me, it was that I've seen the startup side of it. Now let's put our money where our mouth is, right? Give back to the startup ecosystem. That's how I started angel investing. I remember the first time I thought about it, somebody told me you need 10 crores to do it. And I was like, no, I don't have that kind of capital. And then they explained to me, no. And then I spoke to another friend in 21 when I was moving on from my consulting stint at BCG. And then he told me, okay, you can start with smaller checks. So I started doing smaller angel checks initially. And then I said, okay, not just pre-product, pre-revenue, let's invest in companies which are even post-revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot more pre-seed, seed, and that was naturally the access I had because it was either ex-bosses, colleagues, ex-batchmates, etc., who were starting up, right? And then over a period of time, this proposition came about of Atrium Angels,
Mm-hmm.
where I met wonderful people like Umang and Varun, and they said, okay, why don't you manage this fund vehicle, raise capital, and deploy for it? I said, okay. And very organically shifted from the angel way of doing it to the fund way of doing it. Realized both are very different.
Mm-hmm.
When you're managing your own money, you can put it out of, okay, this is money from my wallet.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're managing a fund, it's like, oh, this is fiduciary responsibility. This is someone else's capital. I
Yeah.
have to return it. So the risk appetite changes, how you think, how you have to think twice, thrice before that decision changes, right? And I think Alluvium Capital, which is the other fund vehicle which I'm looking at, there again we're doing early stage investments, sector agnostic, and similar to what Dhruv said, I think operator first capital is getting more validation in the country. We see
Mm-hmm.
multiple models of it come out, and Alluvium is somewhere modeled on the same lines. A lot of operator capital. Um, in our case, it's actually an interesting mix of investors. 50% are new age founders and
Mm-hmm.
50% are actually um, family office people who are traditional family business people, right? So they come with a very dhanda first approach, whereas the new age founders come with a startup valuation first approach, right? It gives an interesting mix to the founders. And even when we speak to founders in our pipeline today or people we've committed to or part of our portfolio, we tell them don't talk to us as if you're talking to an investor or a VC. We are not that. We
Mm-hmm.
are just operators who are allocating capital, and which is why I think Dhruv and I relate very often when we chat, be it about companies, and most often than not, I end up agreeing with what he's saying. So it'll be an interesting conversation. I'll shift to the question you were asking, right? When do you know that one should start
Yeah.
a fund? I think first question is, do you want to be in the business of venture capital? And then the question is, in that, do you want to work with a larger fund? Do you want to work in a smaller fund, or do you want to start your own fund? As soon as you say any of the above, you need to think of a 7 to 10 year commitment. This is something a
Yeah.
friend of mine who worked with one of the bigger VC firms told me that
Mm-hmm.
Pranav, the job is very different, right? Seven
Mm-hmm.
to 10 years is what you commit to, because by that time, carry will start materializing and become relevant.
Yeah.
Second, she said was it's very different from an operator role because you're not hitting the ball out of the park every day. It will be that, okay, you will go through 10 investments
Mm-hmm.
from like a pool of 100 potential investments, which comes from 1,000 top line, right? So it's a
Yeah.
very tedious process. Sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
can be a lonely process. Sometimes you don't see your quick wins. So if you're okay with all of that, and that is the life you want to live, then go for it. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing is a dear friend of mine, I'll give a shout out to him, Saswat Sundar. He has his own micro VC called Fundamental VC, and I think it's much larger fund. I don't know whether he should call it micro VC anymore or not. But point is, he told me, Pranav, this is much harder than a founder's life because a founder has to raise once in 2 years or
Yeah.
once in 1.5 years.
Yeah.
But a fund manager is always raising, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you're always on that treadmill to raise and to deploy.
Yeah.
So if you're okay with all of those things, and the third thing I'll say is Radhika Agarwal, who was earlier with Bloom Ventures,
Bloom.
she
Correct.
told me that if you're okay switching context very quickly, because you're operating across sectors,
Yeah.
and if you're able to maintain a strong social network in terms of building relationships,
Yeah.
then maybe it is for you, right? And I think
Mm.
uh, somewhere I saw a lot of those things in Dhruv, which is why when we connected, I was like, it's meant for you. And I'm very happy to see that it's come along. And I won't be surprised that the capital pool keeps growing and the number of investments keep growing. And we hope to do more investments together.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely. No, we
नहीं
should,
यार,
yeah, we should.
talking like a Punjabi, but यार मतलब I asked the wrong question. These guys, Mayank in my team, कि coffee लोगे कि नहीं? It should be like Scotch कौन सी लोगे? That would have been a better thing to do. But yeah, I did actually yesterday when you mentioned, I did check with the owner of Spring House. मैं कहा
You
यार
called Mukul. You called Mukul up.
Mukul,
You said,
yeah,
Mukul,
yeah.
kar le. Mukul kar le. Mukul's a good
मैंने कहा
friend.
यार,
Mukul's my
and
neighbor.
Mukul is a friend. He's like, मतलब यार देखो, keep it discreet तो कोई प्रॉब्लम
हाँ,
नहीं है, मैं कहा
फ्लास्क
चले
में फ्लास्क में कर लियो.
मैं कहा फिर उसमें फील नहीं आती, मैंने कहा फिर रहने ही देते, विल डू इट मे बी सम अदर टाइम, बट जोक्स अपार्ट,
Yeah.
या आई थिंक three Punjabis talking, of course, that synergy I can see between both of you as well. And even the dhanda wala baat where you put money, and because Dhruv also you said you focus a little more there. I mean, definitely कुछ तो है पंजाबीज में और धंधे वाली बात में कि that has to be aligned to that. It's not pure bet taking. I'm mentioning this because one of the VCs mentioned me get major difference between people in Bangalore and people in the north or Delhi is Delhi people actually more risk takers than Bangalore people. Uh,
Yeah.
is it right culturally? And Punjabis in general are more risk takers or no?
Yeah, there's
And
a
he was fun. And
saying.
just to complete, interestingly, he was talking about the Dravidian and Aryan. It goes all the way back to there. मैंने कहा यार ये तो आप कहीं बहुत ही दूर चले गए.
हाँ, कहाँ पता कहाँ
But
पहुंच गए. नहीं, मतलब मेरे को मैं उतना नहीं है. But I do believe that a couple of my Tam Bam friends are more suited to being Punjabis, and I also believe some of my, like, I say when I'm an operator, I'm
yeah,
more banya than anything else. Like I mean, we love to. So I'll take a page on this. I'll take a slight segue. When you were saying micro bole na bole, वो भी कह रहा है fundamental micro है
हाँ,
नहीं है. Like
हाँ,
I feel like this identity politics has become a little too muddled now, right? Pre-series A, post A, pre-B.
हाँ,
This
हाँ,
is a bridge round. This is a safe note. Like we've lost touch at some point with simple business, right?
yeah,
And I think one of the beautiful concepts, in Sikhi is Rab Rakha, like do your best
yeah,
and leave the rest to God, right?
yeah,
And I fundamentally believe in that, right? So it's I was talking to one of my LPs who's been a mentor. She's my dad's partner for like 35 years now.
hmm,
She's one of the big influences in my life. And she's a Tambram. So when I speak to her, and she's the more risk-taking kind. So she's a very different Tambram, right?
okay,
So when I chat with her, and she's also very religious, very philosophical like me. One of the things that we talk about is if everything is destined, then
yeah,
then then how do you then where is free will, right? And
yeah,
now you bring that in the context of VC, right? So then what happens is, I think you need to first decide what are your boundary constraints, right? So like ask yourself, coming back to the question on running a fund, ask yourself three questions. क्यों कर रहे हो?
hmm,
कैसे कर रहे हो? And then कब करोगे?
yeah,
Right? What I and I'll pick that up, right? Saying if it's destined for you to become a VC, then you might as well do it now. You might as well do it later. And I see too many people using that argument.
yeah,
Actually, that's not true. What it is value creation. Now you can value create in multiple ways. You can value create as an operator. You can value create as a founder. You can value create as an executive, as I have done in my past, or you can actually value create as an influencer in some ways, whether it is capital influence or intellectual influence, right?
yeah,
Now. The only reason why I feel the VC world exists is that very smart people in VC do not want to take that time and effort until that's also not creating some value for them. So what you do is you find a great company, you find a great founder, you find a great circumstance, you find a great opportunity, you find some great, macroeconomic cycle or micro, sectoral cycle, and within that you put your money down,
yeah,
and then you basically use your time and effort to create the alpha there. And the
hmm,
only reason you put that time and effort is because your skin is in the game now. It's
yeah,
as simple as that. Oh, skin, like why is the accelerator model not taken off in India?
hmm,
It should be much larger, right? India is a great land of opportunity, it's a great land of innovation. We're leapfrogging so many technologies. We should
yeah,
have 10 times more the accelerators that we have. Is the
correct,
reason is that this whole concept of boiling the ocean with 500 startups and then funding 50 doesn't matter. Like, so what happens is those 50 get disproportionate
yeah,
opportunities.
yeah,
So the question then becomes this: if you are going to do it, then what is your edge in this ecosystem?
yeah,
क्यों करोगे? Right?
yeah,
When I did it, I said, oh, I've done 15 years of I've done 15 years in the industry. I've done 3 years as a consultant. 18 साल हो गए हैं यार, nearly 2 decades. And one day I was just thinking, and Sanil Sachar, another shout out to Sanil Sachar at Huddle, right? Great friend. He helped me put this into a construct. It's actually on my website now. I wish I could just give him credit there, but he said, capital is of 3 forms: financial, social, intellectual. And he's the one who helped me organize this into an idea. And now it's like, it's on our every pitch deck. It's on our hiring forms. It's part of our interviews.
And you were talking about it yesterday too. So obviously it's
So saying that access information, generate returns, right? Returns by themselves may or may not come, but they will definitely not guarantee access and information for you, growth in those areas. So what I realized was the sort of convergence of financial, social, and intellectual capital actually only happens in 2 places. One is when you're building a business. It could be early stage, late stage entrepreneurship. That's really where you push the needle because it's your business, it's your baby. You really want to. The owner operator mindset picks up, and that's what you do. Or you've invested, you've put money, or you're managing other people's money. And that's where this happens. So I found it to be in only those 2 places. There are other places where it did not necessarily apply. You could actually sit behind a screen, just learn about FNOs and have capital and trade it, and you would not need to have a social capital scene there at all. It's also a great industry for others. So entrepreneurship and investing behind entrepreneurs was for me the simple answer. Then I basically said, after the 18 years, I started thinking for some reason that what am I good at? And I realized I'm not great at 0 to 1. I'm not a great 0 to 1 guy. Right? जब वो 1 हो जाता है, I can take 1 to 100 and I'm very good at it. Right? And that's the reason why Eternal does not invest in anything that's pre-seed.
Okay, makes sense.
I just don't understand it. So these are like, if I can go through this checklist of discoveries that I did, right? अच्छा, तो पहले entrepreneurship करनी है या entrepreneurs को बैक करना है? नहीं, entrepreneurs को बैक करेंगे क्योंकि 0 to 1 मैं कभी भी ठीक से नहीं कर पाऊंगा. तो मेरा हमेशा मॉडल फ्लॉड होगा at the most fundamental level. तो मुझे करना ही नहीं है. Then 1 to 100 करते हैं. Then the next was, अच्छा ठीक है 1 to 100 करते हैं, तो पैसा किससे रेज करना है? तो I said, look, if I go to the traditional family houses, I want to have an edge. I want to be able to differentiate, generate greater alpha than everyone else. The only way I can do it is if I have intellectual capital on my side. ठीक है यार, एक काम करते हैं, let's not go get the big checks. Let's चप्पल घिसते हैं, 10 घरों से 5 करोड़ लेने की जगह 50 लोगों से 1 करोड़ रुपया लेके आते हैं. जब उनकी स्किन इन द गेम होगी तो वो भी हेल्प करेंगे, वो भी अपना इंटेलेक्चुअल और सोशल कैपिटल हमारे लिए खोलेंगे. सो दैट बिकेम द नेक्स्ट थिंग. ओके, दैट्स अनदर एपिफनी दैट आई हैड. ओके, दिस इज हाउ वी गोइंग टू रेज मनी. देन वी सेड, ओके, वेरी क्लियर, प्री सीड नहीं करेंगे, ओनली रेवेन्यू करेंगे. वेरी गुड. देन एक्चुअली व्हेन आई सैट डाउन एंड लर्नड, लाइक Sohail Samir was like critical in teaching me like startup math, as I call it, right? कि valuation कैसे बढ़ती है, क्या होता है, क्या होता है. Then I realized 100 करोड़ के ऊपर ये this mezzanine में ना कोई participate कर रहा है, so it's a white space. Number one, ये sort of post pre-seed but before a series A is a not very many people are operating there, and those who are operating there, whether it's a Rohit and an Ankur at Peer Capital, or it is a the boys at Titan or anywhere else, they're all operators. So they are just coming in and saying, great dhanda, just about to hit the J curve, yahan lagate hain. So these are all sequential epiphanies you have because you start socializing the idea. Problem kya hoti hai? We are all taught to say, oh, you think it's a transformative idea, keep quiet, don't tell anyone about it, just go ahead and do it. We see the complete ulta of that. Like जितना बात करोगे ना, उतना तुम्हें validation मिलेगा, उतना तुम्हारा you'll learn along the way, you'll realize क्या करना है, क्या नहीं करना है, how do you want to build your portfolio construction कैसे करनी है. So that happened. And then the last one is when. One of the things you need to remember is this is a 7 to 10 year, maybe even longer cycle. Number one, you have the fiduciary responsibility कि तुमने अपने नाम पे किसी का पैसा उठाया हुआ है, right? That kind of, this is something famous my dad says, and my dad's the most influential person in my life, right? He often tells me, he says, Dhruv, bodily harm can be recouped. You lose an arm, you can wear prosthetics. Mental harm can be made to do, but reputational harm can never be undone. So be very careful about that. Now, when you take that fiduciary responsibility, and in 7 to 10 years, you also need to realize, boss, when you do fund economics, you are not going to be able to take sexy salaries back. So when you're not able to take that, you need to be independently wealthy also. You need to be like, घर चला सकता हूँ, शादी कर सकता हूँ, बच्चे कर सकता हूँ, उनके स्कूल भेज सकता हूँ. You can't suddenly one day get up and say, oh, this is a wrong career move, and into like screw it and I'm going to leave, because you can't sell illiquid assets in the open market. It's not a stop loss कि भाई 10% पे portfolio बेचा, sorry बोला और वापस चले गए. It's not a public market portfolio. And when comes in 2 parts. One is when can you do it? And when is the other is also, when am I capable to do it, or capable or able to do it?
Yeah.
What you really see is a bunch of kids messaging me, I really think I can add to the VC world. Boss, the best thing you can do right out of college is be a researcher for me.
Yeah.
Right?
Correct.
Right. So I might as well go work at a D Shaw and make 3 times the money that I'm going to pay you, right?
Yeah.
Like, stop telling me VC is the life you want to live. Because the
Yeah.
answer is no. Within a year, you're going to run away, right?
Yeah.
And you have to write your first boring memo. You have to write like 20 dissent memos every week, because you have to tell people why you're not investing in the company. You're just going
Yeah.
to leave the job and go away. So I
Yeah.
think don't understand real world dhanda, real world business.
Yeah.
Like A16Z is a classic example of it. I don't know if you've sort of read the books and the blogs of A16Z, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
one of the big things on their blogs they talk about is who can work at A16Z. If you've
Yeah.
not been a founder, or you've not been a CXO or a VP
Yeah.
or a CXO in a big company,
Yeah.
they don't even entertain your application. आपको तो
Yeah.
कुछ आता ही नहीं है, तो आप invest किस में करोगे?
Correct. Correct.
Right? If you've not built a career, or you've not built returns, or you've not returned money. So,
Yeah.
so I think being able to bring beyond just I have a network, I can source great deals, I
Yeah.
can source capital. But what happens when you try to stitch those two together? How do you make
Yeah.
a decision? How do
Yeah.
you add that alpha in that decision? When do you take a decision to liquidate? When do you take a decision to double down? A lot of it is built on real world gut, and not necessarily built on like some whiteboard formula that you can put up.
I think everything you said can take it like that and just give it to anybody who's thinking, यार fund बनाऊं या ना बनाऊं. So Pranav, how do you define micro VC, right? And why this problem with, okay, are you a micro VC or not? Because I think the ecosystem needs a lot of micro VCs as well, right? जो आपने sweet spot बोला, Dhruv, the post pre-seed to this. Is the stage is what defines a micro VC, or is there a sector that defines a micro VC? If you want to give 3-4 pointers, Pranav, how to define a micro VC, and if even if you guys are micro VCs or not, or
I know for a fact there is no definition as per SEBI about it. So there
yeah,
is no
Yeah.
legal definition around a micro VC. I think it's a more industry created term. Earlier, VC was supposed to be the big boys, right? The
yeah,
top 5, 6 firms, and these were
Yeah.
global VCs which came into India, and those were the talked about VCs, right? I
yeah,
think then there was first generation of domestic venture capital which happened in India.
yeah,
Then there was an emergence of smaller funds, right? And for the lack of uh, small doesn't sound good, so this whole thing came out, these are micro VCs, right? And I
yeah,
think
Yeah.
just sometimes to do with check size as well.
yeah,
And because the check size is small and they are lesser known, they don't end up participating too much at a later stage, so it became that micro VCs are doing a lot more early stage. And I
yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
how it's organically happened. I think
तो वो ऑफेंसिव हो जाता है ना,
that's
मैं
how
तो
I see it.
छोटा हूँ तो इसलिए माइक्रो वीसी हो सब, लाइक इट, आई मीन इट
नहीं नहीं, ये
शुडंट.
बट ये
Now
चेतन
they've
है,
made
मेरे
it
हिसाब से तो
cool.
दिस इज अ
Yeah.
हाँ, बट मेरे हिसाब से तो ये वो ब्रिटिश वाला है ना, कि वो जो उनकी क्लब्स के बाहर लिखा होता था कि इंडियंस एंड डॉग्स नॉट अलाउड. तो बेसिकली क्या हुआ, बहुत देर तक एक क्लब था, उसमें 7-8 वीसी बैठते थे. तो जब
हाँ,
भी कोई नया बच्चा आया उसको अलाउ नहीं करा, तो बोला ओ आई एम होम ग्रोन वीसी, आई एम इंडिजिनस फंड. तो फिर एक
इंडिजिनस.
सीरीज ऑफ इंडिजिनस फंड्स क्रिएट हुए, राइट?
हाँ,
एंड they did a stellar job at whatever they did, right? Six
या,
Sense,
या,
India Quotient, to name a few, right? And they really paved the way for us to like
या,
for a lot of us to get where we are.
या,
And then people started saying कि चलो अब capital raise करते हैं, but अब the big bucks had already been deployed where they had to be deployed. तो अब क्या
या,
करें? अब late stage करते हैं. Then also remember there was a time when the big guys had entered, everyone was giving money to them.
या,
But by the time 3-4 years later happened, there was also people who were now giving money to the big private equity funds, because
या,
those opportunities had then grown, right?
या,
And then there were the pre-IPO funds, and then there were the growth funds. So the number of funds kept increasing. So the big checks kept going away. So
या,
bacha kya is retail participation. When retail
या,
participation started, तो अब वो क्षमता उतनी है ना, आप 2 degrees of separation में ही पैसा रेज करते हो, क्योंकि बाकी लोग आपको ट्रस्ट नहीं करेंगे, राइट?
हाँ, हाँ, हाँ,
So first funds all by organically became small. It
या,
was like कि 4 पार्टनर आएंगे तो 25 करोड़ तुला, 25 में लाऊंगा, 25 में लाऊंगा, 25 लाऊंगा, तो 100 करोड़. 100 करोड़ by no means is a small fund, but भाई we are micro VC at 100 crores. How are we micro VC?
it's a way of differentiation as well, right? So basically,
Exactly. It's
you end up,
just a way of
you end up doing sector focus because you feel that कि उस sector में कोई है नहीं, तो why not
Yeah.
just focus on that sector rather than going all over. Behind the scene you might be investing in other deals as well, but on the face of it you are just sector focus VC, right?
And
Yeah.
sometimes the participation has been so heavy that actually, if you look at the data, go trailing 12 months, look at the number of funds who have done short closes, because you're not obligated to inform anyone except
Yeah.
like the regulator.
Yeah.
But actually, if you are able to like pick out, and I've been sort of speaking to a bunch of people, if you're able to pick out, you'll actually notice virtually every fund has done a short close, because those people who like 2 years ago were just opening up their coffers are बंद कर रहे हैं, तो
हाँ.
और but या जिसमें लगाया उससे कुछ अलग में लगाना है, so
Yeah.
they're also hedging their risks now. So what's
Yeah.
happening is the same amount of money is available in the market, it's just getting spread over different opportunities, and people have realized कि अगर रेस करना है तो try and go like I did, right? I realized कि जब तक एज नहीं है, जब तक वो
हाँ.
एज नहीं चमकेगा, मैंने 400 लोगों से बात करी, 120 ने पैसा लगाया पहली बार,
हाँ. हाँ.
राइट? और वो इससे लगाया क्योंकि वो 120 को ऑर्गेनिकली चमक गया, मैं क्या बोल रहा था.
Correct. Why you don't want to start a fund and be on angel side
Yeah.
only? मतलब
And actually a very interesting thing with there is how do you get three individually wealthy and successful individuals collaborate on building a fund, and how do you become GPs, right?
Yeah,
How do you
yeah.
actually
So it's a pure GP
distribute
run fund
this
is what it is.
Yeah.
It's a pure.
Yeah, the three of them are just, there's 3 GPs and they run the fund, and they have an IC, but the IC is also like ex, like
No.
all cool ex McKinsey guys only. Like, but the fact is, how do you actually assign work to each other? How do you you're all 3 dear friends, equally successful in your own right. Each
Yeah,
individually could run a company on its own, and like,
Yeah.
how do you actually collaborate? How do you make this a success?
Very
So
interesting.
that'll be a really cool outcome, actually.
On two of the points which you mentioned, Dhruv, one is solo GPs versus co-GPs as the idea for funds.
Yeah.
Second, what about an IC structure and how do you think of decision making there? I
Ah.
think that is something which I have been trying to understand, evolve in the last year and a half plus.
Yeah.
And there are, of course,
can-
different schools of thought, right?
Yeah. We can
Honestly,
literally
honestly,
touch upon that, yeah.
but my genuine belief is, I think like for example, Sohail, they didn't do an IC, they did an LPAC. So it's a decision is the 3 of them is the IC, but they
Okay.
have an LPAC whenever they want to come in. But what's interesting is, at least this is this is something that I've heard a lot of people who don't do ICs actually. Because ICs become this very big thing. I know funds who don't have an IC will tell founders, नहीं यार IC में approve नहीं हुआ, and I'll be like, उसकी तो IC है ही नहीं उस fund में, तो साला उसने IC कहाँ से करा? Like that way, right? I think IC is a concept that came out from private equity, because when you are going to do let's say a $250 million check out of a $2 billion fund into one asset and hold it for 5 years, I think the rigor required to make that happen is tremendous, right? Because that's when you also hire the $500,000 McKinsey and Bain team, and you also do like, you get like a Alvarez and Marcel or a Moelis and company to do your IMs and stuff like that. So what I actually gathered is that it's actually an overhang from that. So the minute you started creating $1 billion funds, people start saying, "Acha, is pe check and balance kaun laga raha hai? Who's the IC? Who's the IC construct?" and so on and so forth. So a lot of the demands actually don't come from if you ask a GP, they don't want an IC.
Yeah.
Even with me, 20% of my LPs are actually people who've invested, 80% have not. So those 80 never asked me. But the other 20 who have, they asked me, अच्छा आपकी IC कौन है? फिर मैं कहा मैं decide कर रहा हूँ. And my hit rate on those people who have done other funds with me is 50-50. But my hit rate everywhere else has been much higher.
Yeah. No, I think Pranav, maybe we can talk about your journey thinking about from angel investment to now, doing it like a proper fund. When did you start thinking about an IC?
The idea is the investment committee makes the investment decision. They vote on it. And again, different funds have different approaches. Some operate on a majority yes approach. Some have a different approach of saying that, okay, we need at least a 4 out of 5 or a complete consensus. And again, when we started structuring the IC, we were like, okay, do we want operators? Do we want investors? All of them are, of course, LPs, so that they have skin in the game. But then the question became that, okay, how many people should be there, right? 3 people should be there, 5 people should be there. Then the other question became, how do we vote? Is it a simple yes or a no?
Yeah.
Or is it a ranking between, let's say, high, medium, low, or scorecard between 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. We don't need to overcomplicate it. Let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
Let's just say yes or no voting.
Yeah.
Keep it a majority yes, and that is how we operated. And that is how we operated, be it at Atrium, be it at Alluvium. And I think, yes, there is case for, let's say, skipping an IC in case of a micro VC fund, early funds in the venture universe. It ensures you're able to do deals faster. You're
Yeah.
not caught up in process. It also helps you deploy with greater conviction at times. So
Yeah.
it's something which I have had thoughts around, and we keep discussing this honestly.
You don't need an IC to get money from LPs as a confidence building thing, right? You can do it without the IC also in the initial part.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
not a
but
problem.
I think larger checks also, right? I mean, at least Pranav and I have been raising checks in that sort of, somewhere in the 25 lakh to 2 crore range, right?
Hmm.
When you start talking about your 8, 10, 20, 40 crore checks, right?
Hmm.
That's when they also, either you have that reputation where they trust you completely, right?
Yeah.
Now, for someone whose money I have managed,
Yeah.
they may not, when they do, let's say, decide to invest in one of our growth funds, whenever we do it in the future, they may
Yeah.
not ask for it. But someone for whom it's a first time measure, they may actually say, like, show me some known knowns, right? At least not everything can be unknown to me.
Yeah.
So कुछ तो दिखाओ कि मुझे पता तो है कि मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ. वैसे, oh, by the way, I've got person X, and you know this person either directly or indirectly through
Yeah.
public reputation. Then it matters. Again, there's nothing right or wrong with it,
Yeah.
but I do believe that if you are trying to create a very focused fund or a very targeted fund, then sometimes not even your IC, you may not be able to find 3 or 5 people who
Hmm.
all have the same thought process.
Yeah.
And then now what you've done is you've basically put a funnel at the top, and then now you're recording everything saying IC ने नहीं करा, लेकिन हम वीटो करके चला रहे हैं. And then if 8 out of 10 are all veto, then तुम्हें IC की जरूरत क्या थी in the first place, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think IC is a blocker. I think it's a great confidence building measure, but
Yeah.
it also has repercussions in the long run. And so you need to really think through, second order of thought of all your actions. कि भाई अगर ये करा तो क्या होगा, ये करा तो क्या होगा, फिर ये
Correct.
हुआ तो क्या होगा, वो करा तो क्या होगा.
Want to just have this section around that part for people who are also now creating their decks to tell their story out to LPs. First of all, do you even need a deck initially to talk to your first LP?
Today, if you're doing a Cat 2 fund, it's
Yeah.
it's about 1 crore, right? So let's talk about that. That's the most common fund people end up applying for, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Two parts to it. How did I write the story, and what parts of the story did I double down on as I went along,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing was I actually wrote a narrative myself, right?
Mhm.
Saying what is the narrative, and that was really a very first principles problem that I wrote.
Yeah.
And the way I tell my story is exactly how I wrote it as well. This is the kind of opportunities I had. This is the kind of capital I unlocked during my startup stint. These are the
Yeah.
kind of opportunities I had to invest into, startups. These are the startups I invested in. These are the people I co-invested with.
Yeah.
मैं मंझा हुआ खिलाड़ी हूँ, ठीक है,
हाँ.
प्रूव हो गया, नंबर 1.
हाँ.
Number 2, these are the kind of returns I've generated for myself,
Yeah.
or the people who I've managed SPVs for. And because of that, uh, going forward, now we're giving the same opportunity to a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And this is what Eternal stands for. Here are our differentiations. Here's what commercial construct will look like. Here are the contours of the fund. That's it. It was
Yeah.
like 2 slides on each thing. 12
Yeah.
slide, khatam, story finished. And I was just entering right at the end of a funding winter. What actually happened was I was raising money right bang in the middle of the funding winter.
Yeah.
So people started saying, अरे बनते हैं startup में पैसे, क्या बात है? And I realized that no, I needed 2 or 3 hooks that people get caught onto
Yeah.
when you build a fund, right?
Yeah.
Literally, like there are 3 hooks that people really will get caught onto. So
Yeah.
the first one that happened was I actually went around trying, and big shout out to Sohail, because he did all the legwork on this.
Okay.
Along with OTP Ventures, when they were setting themselves up, we actually managed to speak to a bunch of people and get validation, basically get ballpark figures of what their funds were looking like. So we spoke to they spoke to some 30, 40 funds, I spoke to some 20, 30 funds, and we were able to make a full list of what are the returns based on vintage of
Yeah.
funds. I know you shared
Yeah.
something on our small group that we had
Yeah.
created
Yeah.
about vintage,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
also saw those returns, right? And then
Yeah.
I could actually cherry pick and say, look, majorly people end up making, so the first slide on our
Yeah.
deck is startup ecosystem, startup as an asset class makes money. And look, on average, the industry makes these kind of returns.
Yeah.
Here are the stars. And oh, by the way, let me warn you, sometimes even well-known stars don't end up making money. So I put names of a couple of VCs who
Yeah.
by brand were fantastic, but they just had not been able to deliver returns. So that's just like I put 16 names there, 12 stars and 4 guys who
Mhm.
couldn't do it. And I
Mhm.
said, look, either you put a crore in each of these funds
Yeah.
and then you get great returns, or the need is there for a fund of funds. That's it.
Yeah.
That set me up completely, saying, look, a
Yeah.
co-investment fund is the biggest opportunity in India today. I don't need to do anything else. And then in the backup, I put slides like kitni deals, kitna size, क्या हुआ, ABC. जिसको पढ़ना है वो पढ़ लेगा, लेकिन there
Yeah.
nothing else. The second $1 million slide, I think that we put in was by count who has led a round or who has participated in a round that we did.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have done that, so what is my breadth? Like how, like even as an angel, even as someone who's putting a small like 20 lakh
Mm.
check into a company,
Yeah.
into the 56 companies that I put money into, how did I get access to that on average,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And look at the, so that was the other slide. Like see boss, देख भाई ये सारी कंपनियां हैं,
Uh-huh.
ये सारे फंड्स हैं जिनके साथ, इसके साथ मैंने 12 डील करा है, इसके साथ मैंने 8 करा है, इसके साथ मैंने 6 करा है, ये 10 फंड के साथ 2-2 डील करा है, ये 15 फंड के साथ 1-1 डील करा है. Look, I know people in the industry.
It signals, people in the industry, you have the
Yeah.
right, sort of influence to get the right funds to sit with you, right?
And interestingly, a lot of the people who came up in the multiples, like 5 or more deals done, were
Yeah.
also the guys who were at the top of the table on the first slide. So
Yeah.
that really correlated very well for me. So beach mein those slides, that was all faff, but it like
Uh,
landed up there, right? And the third $1 million slide that we had actually was a slide that actually is nothing but just talks about how the fund is structured, saying, look, we pick assets in 3 ways. So asset and liability. So we had this thing that said it looks like a scale and it says balance sheet.
Yeah.
Eternal operates like a balance sheet. It is an asset side and a liability side. There
Yeah.
are 3 coins on the asset side and they're balanced by 5 coins on the liability side. Here are the
Yeah.
3 conditions on how we pick startups, and there's 5 conditions on how we raise capital from our investors, and that's it. And that was the differentiation slide. Like everyone comes to that, and everything else was a derivative of that. और उस slide के side में ना हमारा rate card चिपका हुआ था. That's it. कि सर ये rate card है, ये rate card पढ़ लीजिए, आपको अपने आप समझ आ जाएगा हमने क्या बना रहे हैं. And that those 3 slides are the ones that we always open up the most. Whenever we're talking to a new investor, let me show you a slide. You usually land up there.
For anybody listening to this and making a deck for fundraising, and I know Pranav is also taking notes, and a lot of them will be asking you for these slides, by the way, Dhruv. But the thing is, there's a lot of effort that went into it, right? Like
Yeah.
it has to be insightful at the end of the day. There can be fab in between, but you have to add in those 2-3 slides that they would never know about, right? They would be like, oh wow,
I agree.
I didn't know this. Until that is done and the legwork is done around that, it doesn't build the story, right?
If you ask me, there's a fourth and a fifth thing, which are something that I learned at Bain during my early days. I had gone as a lateral from INSEAD. So there were people who had come from IIT, IIM, or people who come from IIT, way smarter than me, right? मेरे को तो 6 महीने में उन्होंने रुला दिया था. I was ready to leave my job at Bain and like मेरे से नहीं हो रहा है ये, right? I've luckily found a good few mentors and friends who sort of helped me become successful there. But like one of the 2 things that I picked up was one, we used to have this we used to call this CFR, client facing ready. Is this client facing? Like, I think finesse, cleanliness, something like alignment, something like structure, something like I've realized people just don't have that discipline. People will make a messy deck or a unaligned deck. Like एक side और दूसरी side के heading के sizes में difference होगा, slide coloring में difference होगा. They will not put thought into the looks of that slide, right?
Yeah.
So that I realize is very, very important, because what happens is when you look at decks that are not very well made, you get so distracted by aesthetic, you actually get distracted. Some part of your conscious has gone into looking at trying to normalize the aesthetic.
Correct.
So your ability to absorb a very punchy deck goes away.
Absolutely.
Even if the deck is perfect and everything, it's something problematic. The other thing that we learned was something called zero defect. I have seen factual errors, I have seen grammatical errors, I have seen spelling mistakes, I have seen, just things that you should, like, check, double check,
Correct.
check, double check. लोग नहीं
Correct.
करते. So like these two things, like, make sure it looks nice and it doesn't have any mistakes,
Yeah.
are two ways you can make sure that a person is going straight to consume your message.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
you have these two things, no matter how strong your message is,
Yeah.
it's completely goes away. So that
Absolutely.
is actually a given on deck making, yeah.
Obviously stories, priority over design, but if you have a good story, it's your responsibility to have a good design as well, right?
Exactly,
Otherwise the story
exactly.
falls flat, because then you're trying to look at something else. And sometimes even, even if it's nicely designed and too beautifully designed, that's also a problem, because then you're distracted by, this visual which may not make much sense, and you want them to read the numbers, not the visuals, right?
A well-made slide just doesn't mean कि उसपे बहुत सारे visuals हैं या बहुत
हाँ.
graphic बहुत अच्छा है,
हाँ.
right? It could actually just mean that your logo shows up on the same space, same
Yes.
place, same size
Hygiene.
in
Yeah.
every slide, so it
Correct.
looks like, oh my God, this is like a magazine. Like what would be in a coffee table book, right? If I just had to be in a deck, but I've seen some of the best decks actually have that. So when we did our deck, we have this beautiful picture of the Amar Jawan Jyoti,
Okay.
right, on Eternal. So we've put
Yeah.
we've put
Eternal.
these, like, every two slides we have something which is Eternal. So there are, couple of the LPs actually, when they saw the deck, they actually called me back and said, why did you choose these pictures? So we have,
Yeah.
like, the first page is just India Gate and Amar Jawan
Yeah.
Jyoti, and it says, and we said this is the eternal flame, right?
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
there is Supreme Court behind one slide, which is saying
Yeah.
justice is eternal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then another is Jantar Mantar saying science and math is eternal, right? There are
That's
certain
all
things which
story,
are,
right? And this is very
that
interesting. That's all
it's
story only,
just,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and to the point that now we have blow-ups of each of those images
Yeah.
on the walls in our office, because people correlate
That's yeah.
eternal with those images.
This was a great discussion around how to create an
Yeah.
LP deck. I would also now bring in Pranav on the other side, because a lot of founders would find value when they are looking at this episode, to also see what is the life of VC, यार जिससे हम पैसा मांगते रहते हैं, उनकी भी तो लाइफ देखें कितनी डिफिकल्ट है. The other is they might find value in how you give feedback to their decks, right? Founder decks. So Pranav, I was talking to you about, you have seen a lot of decks and everything. So maybe a couple of things we should discuss and take your views, on couple of aspects of the founder decks, how they should go about it.
Let's start from the point around decks, right?
Yeah.
And the founder decks, and I'll link it to what Dhruv was saying about even the fund deck. The commonality between Dhruv and I are both we are ex-consulting, right? So
Yeah.
we are
Yes.
trained somewhere in the same school. So
We're
I
trained
think
like that.
any good deck, any
Hmm.
good deck, चाहे आप consulting deck लो, fund deck लो, pitch deck for a startup लो, right? I think the fundamentals don't change,
Yeah.
which is the fact that it has to deliver a message. It
Yeah.
has to be in a
Yeah.
storyline form, and it has to be something which is, the word some partner taught me at BCG was, is dummy proof,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even if you're not doing a voiceover for it, people should be able to process it. Even somebody
Yeah.
without any context, if he's glancing through it over WhatsApp, because
Yeah.
that is the attention span for a VC, it should
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Right. And I think even after a 15 slide deck and somebody reading through it, they will probably just take away 2-3 things. But those
Yeah.
2-3 things should be important as to what you wish to convey. And
Yeah.
that is what Dhruv
Yeah.
was also saying, right? Even for their fund deck, there are 2-3 messages they want to convey, and
Yeah.
those need to land.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The other thing which somebody taught me while I was at BCG, just giving some fair share of credit there, is that on every slide, when you present also, you can't say more than 3 points,
Yeah.
right? So your heading has to be the message. Everything else is a breakdown on that slide,
Yeah.
and not more than 2-3 statements per slide, right? So
Yeah.
think of it that if you get maybe 45 minutes to pitch, keep 20 minutes to just like for the do the Q&A for it, 20-25 minutes of that, and then
Yeah.
20 minutes maximum for your deck. So a minute a slide, and that's how you need to run it.
Mhm.
The one thing I tell people is depend on your stage, right?
Yeah.
If you are pre-seed, pre-revenue, etc., then it is largely a vision exercise.
Yeah.
And I think very early stage, we don't bother too much about TAM. It's almost a given that in most cases, large markets would be the case. Like it's almost obvious at times, and
Yeah.
that's a filtering criteria. But at a seed stage, I think it becomes a lot more about the numbers, what traction you've been able to show, what team you've been able to get, etc.
Yeah.
And basis that one wants to evaluate when one is looking at a deck.
Mhm.
And just extending to one thing which a partner at a tier one fund told me, right? When he's evaluating a startup, he's like, तीन चीजें होती हैं. I look at motions in 3 factors: ability to raise, ability to build a team, and ability to execute the business.
Yeah.
If those three motions are in place, then things are good. I
Yeah.
think that is something which founders need to keep in mind. Alluding to the deck you were mentioning, right? So it wasn't actually a consumer one, it wasn't a vertical SaaS one. It was a company which is trying to build a sort of a curated marketplace with reviews,
Yeah.
right? And this is a company by a dear friend. The company is called Honestly, and the co-founders are a husband-wife couple, Vivek Madani and Karishma Rathore. The interesting thing was when their deck came out, I
Mm-hmm.
think everybody who saw the deck was blown away because of the clarity of thought. There
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of detail given into it. They were
Mm-hmm.
pre-product,
Yeah.
pre-revenue, and
Yeah.
they had complete clarity on why they were building, what they were
Mm-hmm.
building, how will it look. They had
Mm-hmm.
done a lot of user surveys, built a community, and all of those details were in the slides. They had thought
Yeah.
about competition, they had thought of market, monetization, everything, right? And I think
Yeah.
that really impressed everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have put in a small check in a personal capacity, but I think they managed to raise capital from Better. And when the
Oh,
team at
nice.
Better saw the deck, they tweeted about it, saying that this is, of course, they didn't tweet the deck, nor
Yeah.
did they disclose the name of the startup, but they were like, sometimes you come across a deck which shows clarity of thought, and that is enough to put in a check.
Yeah.
This is what you see.
I
So I
remember
think
Vaibhav mentioning
that's
that.
what,
Yeah, I think you're
yeah.
mentioning about that tweet that Vaibhav did about the clarity in a in a deck that he saw. I'm assuming that's the same one, but yeah, I think when you don't have numbers, anything else, right? Just the clarity to show, because sometimes a lot of time pre-seed founders would do something very basic and wrong. Is they would pick up a template which maybe Guy Kawasaki has said that 10 slides only, and they'll be like problem solution this try to force fit it. And I'm talking about really early stage founders, right? I mean, these are
Yeah.
technical people who don't know how to make a deck. So they would put that, and then the problem is even not coming out clearly why you exist. Then the rest of the slides doesn't even matter, right? At the end of the day.
Hmm.
Also, I think the slides have to be thought in such a way that if most likely you will be asked to present it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you should be able to say something which is reflected in the slide. Like what you say has to be in sync with what the slide is.
yes,
And it should be something which goes in sync,
yeah,
which is not overwhelming for the person who's trying to absorb both at the same time.
yeah.
Yeah.
True, true.
So
Any thoughts,
I think we
Dhruv?
were talking about I think we are talking about what to put. I think another thing that I have is what not to put, right? One of the big
Mm.
things I notice in most decks now is name throwing. Like be very, very careful about name throwing, right? I
Yeah,
remember when the early days when our deck was going out, कुछ लोगों के नाम थे, अभी आज भी हैं मेरे, कुछ लोगों के नाम थे मेरे deck में.
yeah,
And someone called me and said, dude, of course I taken everyone's consent, but people did not realize how many people I was going to reach out to.
yeah,
He said, dude, have you put my, and it's the big, talking about the CEO of $1 billion like decacorn, let's put it like that, right?
okay,
And he
okay,
said, dude, तूने मेरा नाम deck में डाला है? तो
yeah,
मैंने कहा, I sent him a screenshot saying, dude, I asked you. He said, okay, yeah, whatever you want, do it. It's okay. I'm
yeah,
okay with it.
yeah.
He says, yeah, I've just been inundated with reference calls since morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm so sorry. Next time I'll qualify. So then I started qualifying all my decks by saying, please, if you want to reach out to any of our people to ask, do let me know so I can give them a heads up,
Yeah,
because otherwise it becomes like and no one no one minded it, but like uh, it's my habit. Like if someone puts someone's name in it, the first thing I do is I message them back saying, "What's your view?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
क्या लगता है?" And like sometimes it'll be like, "बिल्कुल मत करियो, भाग जाइयो, मेरे से गलती हो गई." Like,
Uh,
and I'll be like, "Why would you even do that? Like, do you not have spatial awareness about what is
yeah,
happening?" And I think the world is very, very small now with all
yeah,
the digital devices. So
yeah.
name throwing is one of the things you should be very, very careful about,
Pet peeve,
right?
definitely.
हाँ मतलब you lose credibility very fast, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And in this industry you don't get a second crack at most people again.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, absolutely. So good, good. I think we'll wrap up that section. So thank you both of
Yeah,
Yeah,
you for telling your views. Of course,
yeah.
it's relevant to us. For us also, it's learning. I'm gonna take some of it and share it with my team as well. Matlab, get more insights from VC how to do it. But founders will also find a lot of value. So great,
yeah.
guys. I think
Yeah.
last 10 minutes में रखता हूँ
Sure.
आपके लिए स्पेशल 5-5 मिनट लेके एक गाना सुनने के लिए आपकी आवाज, आपकी मधुर आवाज. Whatever you guys want to sing
You
without.
do want views, right? You do want views, right?
Uh,
Though I must
You'll
say
get
I'm
a lot of
addicted to
comments,
Kamli
but there'll
Chamli
be
right now.
abuses.
It's like playing in my head right now.
Which
So I don't
one?
know if you've heard the new song Tamdi Chamdi.
Tamdi Chamdi. Do you know how to sing it, or should I play it on YouTube? Wait a
No,
second.
absolutely not. We're not singing it at all. But
But I want to play it
like
on
if this is,
YouTube just so that
yeah,
because
this
you
is
mentioned.
Chetan's way of hazing us. I think we need to bring him back. Don't worry. अभी कनाडा में है 6 महीने में वापस अपने आप वापस आ जाएगा तो
6 महीने में नहीं, शायद 2 महीने में आ जाओ, यहाँ ठंड जब पड़नी शुरू हो गई है, so probably we'll be back sooner than that. But
yeah, sooner you'll be back.
but yeah, please tell me a song. We'll play it in the background, and I want to just know, give them a little personal. I know शुरू में हमने बड़ा काफी personal बातें कर ली, but what a Friday evening looks like, and how do you balance like work life? I think it's very important for फंड मैनेजर्स वांट टू नो ऑन अ सीरियस नोट कि यार फंड तो चला सकते हैं, इतनी 6-7 कंपनियां भी चलानी है और इतना टाइम भी देना है, but just knowing how you hack that sort of balance would be great to know while playing that song in the background. So उसके हिसाब से भी आप सॉन्ग बता सकते हो
अच्छा
that maybe
तो मेरा
that
तो ये देखो मेरे हिसाब से तो देयर इज ओनली वन आर्टिस्ट ऑफ दैट कैलिबर एंड लेवल हु हैज एवर एग्जिस्टेड व्हिच इज दिलजीत दोसांझ
oh
तो
yeah,
like
which
like
song?
my absolute favorite wind down song is Do You Know by Diljit Dosanjh.
Oh
Like you
yeah,
can play
that's
it
mine
anytime.
too.
So
Do you
it's
know?
like my eternally favorite song.
In terms of music, again, I have a very different taste. So I would like Sufi music and go to Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, etc. Right? I think that's more like the artsy person in me.
अब फिर से
Yeah.
अपनी एज गिव अवे कर रहे हो, अब लोग बोलते हैं राहत फतेह अली खान, वो भी अब पुराने हो गए, आप तो नुसरत पे हो, तो देन वी हैव
Nusrat.
कॉमन लव, सो इवन आई वाज
So
Yeah.
ह्यूज
I'm
फैन.
like
so
in
so
the
my
OG zone.
Huh.
Yeah.
So my guilty pleasure is that if I'm like if I'm so I have this habit of like taking a shower after every time I work out. Sometimes I do a daytime shower. It'd be like वो दिन में भी एक शावर हो जाएगा, सुबह तो करते हैं वो, दोपहर को भी, फिर रात को सोने से पहले होता है. तो रात वाला होता है ना, इट्स लाइक व्हेन आई गेट इन बाथरूम, इट्स लाइक 90s के मसाला सॉन्ग, like they'll it'll go from like Husn Hai Suhana to like Tip Tip Barsa. So like I have this 90s like kachra playlist completely, right? And so I think whatever
Not
puts
kachra,
a
it's the
smile on
best
your
one.
face.
I mean, I'm
नहीं नहीं
guilty.
मतलब that's
Best
it.
है.
2 drinks down. That's 2 drinks down. That's what you want to do, right?
Great guys, this was super super fun and insightful both. I mean, both together. Matlab, I'm genuinely
Yes.
saying that, and I feel you can also say that if you want to, or I'll force you to say that. But I
No,
hope you had fun,
100%.
and yet the conversations were good.
No,
No,
100%. I
I
think it's very hard
loved
to
it.
do conversations like this where you are trying to do personal plus professional and you're keeping it fluid and you're doing this without drinks sometimes. But I
Next
think on
time
a
with the
Friday
drinks.
evening, yeah, no, but even then, I think Friday evening, it was time well spent. So
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank
exactly.
you for
Thank you.
having
My
me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for all of you who tuned in and watched, and I hope you found a lot of values. And for future episodes, keep watching us and subscribe to this YouTube channel.